Hey guys, Richard Holden here. We are live at 7 o'clock, and today we're going to talk about boost response. More specific tests I have coming up to actually test what happens and how we change the response rate of turbos, more specifically with the Y pipe. And I'm going to do several different changes with the Y pipe. But first of all, hey, you got to hydrate. And if you guys have not noticed, please take a look. And I have turned on Super Chat. I figured out how to do that. And this is all brand new to me. I've had a lot of people ask how they can support the channel. So I have turned that on. So if you guys would like to help out the channel and get answers to your questions, and that's awesome. If not, that's not a big deal either. I like both. I'm going to answer the questions anyway, but we're going to talk a little bit about boost response and some tests I have coming up that are going to test boost response basically on a single turbo application. I mean, we could do it also on a twin turbo application, but a single turbo probably will be easier because that way I'll be able to I'll be able to weld up configurations for different Y pipes. Because one of the questions I've had in a lot of the LS turbo testing I've had, when we use, we have a Y pipe that we use, Graham's in the house, Matt's in the house. When I have a Y pipe that I use that we normally run on the engine dyno, basically we run the stock exhaust manifolds that are facing forward to the front of the engine. Then we have a Y pipe that merges together into a 3-inch V-band, and then we put whatever turbo that we want on there. I have V-bands to T3, T4, and T6 turbos, so it just makes it easy to put on whatever I want. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make different Y pipes, because everyone's asking me, hey Richard, what happens if I put instead of a 3-inch Y pipe, which I've used on a lot of stuff, what happens if I put a 2.5-inch Y pipe? What happens if I put a 2-inch Y pipe? What happens if I put a divided Y pipe and I have a twin scroll turbo? All of those are excellent questions, and some of them I don't really have answers to. Now, obviously the engine dyno is not ideal for all of this stuff. Some of the stuff like transient response and that kind of stuff is better on a chassis dyno or actually on the out on the street or on the track. But the engine dyno will give us an idea what's happening. Now, the thing that I don't like about the engine dyno in terms of response rate is basically we provide an artificial load. So if anybody that's not been on the engine dyno before, what we do is we go to wide open throttle, we park it at wide open throttle, and let's say we have the dyno set to run from 3,000 to 6,500 RPM. So we'll park the motor at wide open throttle. We push the button that releases the dyno, and then the dyno will allow the motor to rev from 3,000 to 6,500 RPM, if that's what we have it set at. And it will allow it to accelerate at a given rate. Let's say 300 RPM per second, because that's what we choose. So we park it at wide open throttle, we release it, it runs at a rate of 300 RPM per second from 3,000 to 6,500 RPM. And while that gives us good repeatable data for the engine dyno stuff, the problem is that it doesn't demonstrate what happens in the real world. Because what happens with turbo motor, with any motor really, is when you have a change in power output, you have a change in acceleration rate. So if you make more power, it takes less time for the motor to get from one RPM to the other if you make more power. And that's pretty normal. Unfortunately, the engine dyno doesn't tell us that. All it tells us is that we made more power. It doesn't change the time that it takes to accelerate from 3,000 to 6,500 RPM because that's fixed by the dyno. So it doesn't give us a really, really good idea, really accurate idea in terms of boost response. So that's why I tell people, and I've told people this a lot, the engine dyno is not ideal for telling us what happens with response rate, because it doesn't tell us what happens is if you're driving down the street and you just lay into the throttle, regardless of what gear you're in, you lay into the throttle and you're racing another guy, and then the boost comes up and then you take off and you make all kinds of power or lose traction or whatever happens with the turbo stuff. So the engine dyno is not good for telling us that. The chassis dyno works fairly well. Out on the street works even better. But the engine dyno doesn't tell us exactly what happens there. What it does do, though, is if we have a turbo that does not respond and we're able to load it all the way, let's say at 3,000 RPM, and then we release it, and then the engine starts making enough exhaust flow, that exhaust flow translates into boost response, and then the boost response turns into more exhaust flow, and pretty soon we have the cycle going and everybody's happy. the turbo will tell us that, but it won't tell us the transition throttle response kind of deal. But it will allow me to do the following test, which is exactly what I do. Okay, guys, you guys are here. And what I want is I need somebody. Yay, Jason. I was just going to say, Jason is the first guy to do Super Chat. $4.99 for Jason. And I will answer your question. I'll stop what I'm doing to answer your question because this is my first experience with Super Chat. And I think it's awesome. I have turned it on so that you guys I've had lots of people ask me about helping out with the channel and helping out with the expenses that I have when I go down and do all this testing. And Jason is officially the first guy or gal, I don't know, could be Jennifer Jason Lay, is the first person to activate Super Chat, which I think is awesome. So my thoughts, Jason, we'll go ahead and get to your question. Thoughts on a VS Racing 7875 with a 3-inch V-band inlet on the hot side, 0.96 AR for a 5.7 LS1. Easy 700 horsepower tour. Yes, that's very easy. That's what I run, and that's what I'm going to talk about tonight is when we do our Y-pipe, I run we have 2.5-inch Y-pipe running from the stock exhaust manifolds. They feed into a 3-inch V-band. We had then the V-band going from a 3-inch to a T4 turbo. We mount our 7875 Gen 2 turbo, and that works very well. That at 0.96 should be fairly responsive on a 5.7, especially if you have a cam, which I'm assuming that you do. That should work fairly well. So thanks, Jason, for being the first guy. And I wanted to tell you that the reason that I turned on Super Chat, which again, thanks, $4.99. That's all. It's awesome that people even do that. The reason I turned it on, I wanted to give you an example of some of the expenses that I go through when I go down to test. And these are just minor ones. But when I go, like, for instance, the last time, Chris stepped up to $20. That's huge. When I went down to test the last time, I want to give you guys an example of what it takes to go down. And I'm not even going to talk about all of the dyno costs and the welding and parts and all the stuff that happens, but even just driving down there. So I got to take my 1500 down there. When I went down there last time, I did a bunch of testing on a 4.8 with twin turbos and single turbos and all kinds of stuff. So I went through, $1.99, $4.99. Yeah, ProCharge Mopar guys are in the house. But I went down there last time and I bought more than 50 gallons of race fuel. Now, when I say race fuel, it's E85 and it's from the pump. So actually that was the least expensive thing that I bought while I was down there. So I went through about 50 gallons with all the testing on the twin turbo stuff. And luckily for me, this is California, so it's more expensive than other places in the country, but it's still about $2.50 a gallon or so. So I had 50 gallons of that stuff. Also driving my truck down to go to West Tech and back, which is about a 1,000-mile trip. Again, I go through at least 50 gallons of gas going down there and back and do the drive around that I need to do. Because as we know, I always go to the wrecking yard and try to find a motor that I probably can't afford and that I want anyway. But again, so I've gone through more than 100 gallons of fuel, and 50 of that is, since it's California, is like $3.25 a gallon or whatever. And then the race fuel E85 is about $2.50 a gallon. So again, you can easily see how all of those costs really start to add up, and that doesn't take into account any of the dyno expenses, all of the stuff that I have to buy, me taking an arbitrary trip to the wrecking yard and finding a motor that I want, all of that stuff. But it is fairly expensive, even just that stuff, even just the fuel. If you multiply 100 gallons times, $3 a gallon or whatever the average number is, it gets to be fairly expensive. So, and that's why I turned this on. And the second reason I turned this on, not because I have expenses, because everybody does. Let's face it, everybody out there has expenses that they're doing in their world, in their life, and we're all trying to do project cars and stuff. And the real reason that I did it is because I'm going to try to do Patreon too as soon as I learn how to do that and understand it a little bit better. But I get lots and lots of guys, yeah, Sean, $5. What experience do you have tuning forced induction motors on pure methanol? Actually, I don't have any. I've only been involved in one M1 test, and that was with John Mahovitz, who's running a supercharged 5.4 motor that was very high horsepower. It was probably 13 or 14 or 1,500 horsepower. Steve's in with $10. Yeah, Julius is in with $5. And yes, Steve, I do want to do the Jeep 4-liter with boost, because that's another inline 6-cylinder, just like the the 4.9 liter inline 6-cylinder Ford and the 292 Chevy. The 4-liter Jeep is the next one I think that I would do, along with the 4.2 liter Atlas motor. Dude, John stepped up with 25. You guys are like 100 different kinds of awesome. I thank you for all the stuff that you do, and I'll try to keep making sure that I go down and do all kinds of testing. I just talked to Jim Hall over TPIS. He's working on the tune port manifold, which I have something that I haven't talked about on that tune port manifold, something extra special that I'm going to do that I haven't shared with anybody, and it should be awesome. You guys should think, dude, Richard Holder, that guy's like twice as cool as I thought he was. When you guys see this test, it will be awesome. Yeah, another $5. What's up? Again, so there are lots of expenses that happen when we go down to West Tech and I do all this testing. If I can just stay away from the wrecking yards, although there's so much cool stuff that I see that I really, really want. There has never been a time that I've walked through really any wrecking yard and not found something that I wanted to take home. I mean, it might be something as a simple exhaust bend, or it might be something like as exciting as some Packard motor or Cleveland, or even, God forbid, a 351M motor, which I've just got a bunch of information on. And I had a lot of guys, if you guys haven't seen the video that I posted, again, Steve, thanks a lot. Julius, awesome. I don't see your name and number. Thanks for all the useful information. Keep up the great work. If you had a question, I will definitely answer it. Although I had a guy comment on the video that I just posted, if you guys haven't seen that, it's a 5-liter Mustang with a turbo. And the question was, would you rather spend the money on doing heads and cam and intake, or maybe just get GT40 heads and cheap? Yeah, Eric's in the house. Or would you rather just maybe do a mild combination with cam and springs and maybe the GT40 heads and the intake manifold from the wrecking yard, and then just turn the boost up? So let me know in the comments what you guys like to do. Would you rather go inexpensive, like most of us, low buck stuff, and rely on boost? Matt Mullins, my guy, $9.99. I like that. I like this. I like the symmetry of that. That's awesome. Would you rather just turn the boost up? Dude, my Audi Turbo guy is in the house. Okay, B7 S4 Turbo, $10. Awesome. That's fantastic. So now tell me, really, do you have an Audi with an LS motor in it, and is it turbocharged? Because that's like several different kinds of awesome. And by the way, it's make sure Andrew's in the house, Aaron's in the house. Make sure to stay hydrated. Okay, Aaron, Richard, I'm building a 5.2 Magnum. Nice, Magnum in the house. And I've been looking at a GT45 with a 1.05 AR. That'd be good for 600 to 700 at the crank. Yes, it would be good. That's right in that wheelhouse for that turbo. And on a 5.2, a 318, that's actually going to work very well. Andrew, I told you guys we would support you with Super Chat. See, I'm learning it. This is all new for me. I think this is cool. Yes, Karen, the GT45 would be awesome on a 5.2, and I can't wait to do Magnum testing. I'm really excited about the beer keg. I'm very excited about that. But I want to tell you, and I'm losing track here. I think because of my hydration, maybe I'm thinking, oh, good. But let me tell you what I'm doing before I get off track. What I'm going to do, what I have coming up, is I'm going to build different Y pipes. So I've had a lot of people talk to me about Y pipes, and they said, hey, Richard, does a smaller Y pipe going from a 3-inch down to 2.5 or 2-inch Y pipe improve the response rate? And my answer has always been, it depends. And it really does. A lot of times the turbo itself is going to be the restrictive thing. And then what you have going to the turbo is not going to make as much of a difference. Sometimes the Y pipe will be restrictive. So if you're trying to make a lot of power, a 2-inch Y pipe might become restrictive. So we might see an increase in back pressure just from the pipe sizing, but you also might see an increase in response rate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run small. Yeah, Dale. Yeah, $4.99 with Dale. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the same stock exhaust manifolds, the truck manifolds. I'm going to build 2 more Y pipes. I have the Y pipe that we use, which is 2.25 or 2.5. And then I'm going to build a smaller 2-inch one that joins into a 3-inch V-band, just like the one that I have. So we'll see a change between a 2.5 and a 2-inch to see if there's a change in response rate. And I'll use a turbo that's big enough to see some kind of change in response rate. Andrew King, yeah, $4.99. But what I'm also going to do, and something I've wanted to do for a long time, is I'm going to run another Y pipe that's 2-inch. I'm going to merge them together into basically a divided housing, a twin scroll housing, to see if the twin scroll housing and the divided Y pipe will actually make a change. Why couldn't my dad have been Richard Holder? First of all, it offends me that anybody there would be asking me if I could be their dad, because I'm way too young for that, because I'm only in my late 20s and I have a 15 or 16-year-old child. But that's what I want to find out. I want to find out if the divided housing actually does anything. I want to find out if the smaller Y pipe actually does anything. And I also want to find out if there is a change in back pressure from all of these things, actually, if they do anything. So I'll make sure to take all of that data and we'll run it up. Maybe we'll run it up near 1,000 horsepower or something to find out if there's actually a change. So let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think that a divided housing like on this T6 stuff is going to do anything, or on a T4? Do you think that the smaller Y pipe will actually do anything? Will we see a change in back pressure from any of this stuff? Or I see, all of this stuff is really, really exciting to me, and it allows me to go in and actually do some fabricating and do some welding. Now, I'm not a great welder. We have a MIG welder at West Tech, and I do some stuff with the MIG welder. I'm not Joe Fabricator. I have a guy that did a lot of stuff for me when I was running World Challenge. His name is Bernie Van Hammond, and he's maybe the best guy that I've ever seen. He's the sharpest guy that I know, and he's an amazing fabricator. He's the kind of guy that can look at something and go, oh, it needs to be like this. And he just sees stuff in space. And then not only can he see that stuff, then he can make that stuff, which is, to me, is an amazing thing. I see stuff and then I can make it, and then it never comes out the way that I see it, because I didn't have the talent or the forethought enough to see the right thing and then to be able to make the right thing. But I can make it work on the dyno. So I look forward to doing that stuff and building the Y pipes. I'm going to make them interchangeable so that when we do this test, that I have to change as few things as possible, because I want the lengths to be the same and all of that. So, because I know that how the internet is, and I know how people's comments are going to be. They're going to say, hey, Richard, you changed the length and you did all this stuff. So, that's what happens. I'm sure that you guys know, you guys have been around the internet and found out. The live chat thing is working awesome. The super chat thing is working. Actually, irrespective of whatever money thing is there, I'm just excited that I was able to turn something on and actually have it work my first time, which is very exciting for me, Okay, let's get to some. Matt Mullen wants me to put my red hat up in the background, and I'm going to be changing some stuff in the future. We're making some changes for January for 2021. I'm going to changing the orientation of stuff. I'm going to changing backgrounds. All kinds of cool stuff, because this is new for me. I'm learning, so it'll be cool. But the red hat that he's referring to is the 200-mile-an-hour club at Bonneville. And oddly enough, I've been well over 200 miles an hour, and I've done it in a Honda Civic. Not just any Honda Civic, the world's fastest Honda Civic. Yes, Bernie, Matt. I know, I miss Bernie so much. That guy is... I cannot say... There are people in this world that Serious Vet. There are people in this world that I cannot say enough good things about, and Bernie Van Hammond is one of those guys. He's the kind of guy that when you're around him, he makes you a better person. And there's not a lot of great guys. Brian Tooley from Brian Tooley Racing is another guy like that. There are some guys out there that are like that, and Bernie is one of them, and he's just like 17 different kinds of awesome. Serious Vet. I like you already because I helped you choose the wrong cam for your LY6 Vet. We are going to be doing some shirts. That's another thing that's happening in 2021. We're going to be offering shirts, and I'm doing some, I'm going to be offering probably 3 or 4 different designs, and I may do a poll. Hopefully some of you guys got to see, I sent out on the community for Facebook. I sent out a release for this to let you guys know that I would be doing this. Jeff wants to know, okay, let's get to some questions and answers here. Jeff wants to know salvage yard Y pipe suggestions. Honestly, I don't prefer stainless. To me, it doesn't matter. Stainless is better and it lasts longer, but I almost never do anything for long term. And I have no problem like MIG welding stainless to mild steel. I don't even care because I don't even know that I shouldn't be doing that, and I do it anyway. But what I like are the Y pipes that come from, a lot of times they cut stuff off at our wrecking yards. They use the big like hydraulic scissors and they just cut the cats off of the LS stuff, which leaves the flange and everything, which is great. But when you cut off stuff from, trucks and earlier stuff that didn't have cats or where the cat's farther back, they leave Y pipe sections on there. So if you have a dual exhaust that goes into a single exhaust, that's a Y pipe. And to me, that's the start of a good turbo setup. Certainly anything that we can run on the dyno, which is awesome. Yes, every cam is a turbo cam is one of the shirts, Jason, that I do want to do. And I'm going to be doing that. And I have a fairly cool idea for that. And I think guys will like that. Shane says, I'm planning a stage of building another 4-liter Jeep stroker. So that's cool. I like the strokers. It will start from a junkyard long block, which is where all good race motors start from. And I do want to do a Jeep just because they're so popular. And Freiberger loves Jeep. So if I do a Jeep, I'm sure that he will be all on, yeah, Robert's in for $10 from Australia. See, I love my guys down in Australia. 2 things. They love Cleveland's and they got lots of snakes. And the third thing that I didn't even mention, that there are 3 things, lots of sharks down there, which all the things that are awesome about Australia. And the accents. I mean, Olivia Newton-John, come on, please. So let's see what Robert has to say. Hello from Australia. Just wondering if you've ever done an all-bore 4185 LS with a stock stroke. I have not. I have done 4185 bores, but we did it with a really, really long stroke, like a 4.5-inch stroke on a tall deck RHS block. But if anybody's interested, I have some 4185 bore pistons that are just sitting around. They're brand new, and we were going to use them in that 495 stroker. So if anybody needs forged pistons, they've been sitting around for years. I'm not going to do anything with them. So I'll make you a super sweet deal on those. I don't know about the compression height, and I don't know what example that they would use in other than a 495, but I'm sure that with the right rod ratio or with the right connecting rod, it probably would work. James says he's got a karate chop cam. That should be on a shirt, right? Matt wants to know if I can please do a video from West Tech with Steve Brule. Steve Brule is like, Steve Brule is also awesome. He doesn't get enough credit. He's on the Engine Master stuff, and Freiberger and Finnegan, or Freiberger and Dulcich get all of the accolades from there. But the reason that they go there is because of Brule, and he's really the super dyno guy. Frankie Two Valve wants Frankie Two Valve. That's nice. Dude, you must be from Jersey or something. Have you ever cracked an LS plastic manifold with a specific boost level? I have not. We have not run those. I would like to do. I want to go back to the guys at Fast and do a test with their intake manifolds, because a lot of guys say, oh, the Fast, they break or they crack or they leak. And I want to show we've run 26 or 27 pounds with the Fast and never had any problems. I've never had those problems with the other plastic manifolds. Normally, when people break them, they break them on a backfire, like a nitrous backfire. That will definitely blow it up. We've done that, but not from like an instantaneous thing like that is really bad. As a matter of fact, I blew the top of the, if you look at the 5.3 Big Bang motor, I blew the top of the aluminum intake manifold off. So we know that you can break it on a backfire deal like that. But I have not broken one just from boost. And I don't know what that level is, although I'd like to find out. We'd like to do a controlled test and find out how much pressure some of these things will take. John wants to know when we're doing the Max Speeding Rods GT3582 review. I have those turbos now. They arrived basically the day that I left from the previous test with a 4.8. I'm going to run those. I suspect that GT3582 from Max Speeding is probably going to be similar to the CX Racing one that we ran, although the CX Racing ones were very, very old. They were multiple years old. So maybe the other ones are a little bit better. I don't know. We will try them and find out. What I suspect is they're going to be a 500 to 600 horsepower turbo each, certainly 1,000 horsepower with a pair of them, and they will probably work well. And hopefully, I'll do some more stuff with the guys from Max Speeding because they have some kind of cool stuff. Kenny is complaining in all caps too, by the way. So cheers to you, Kenny. No wonder I didn't get the Facebook notification. You haven't accepted my friend request. That's my fault. That's my bad. So I'll drink to that. Matt wants to know, do manufacturers give you guys engines for testing like Ford did Where am I at? Oh, Ford did with a Coyote. Could you play with a new Godzilla? They have not provided me a Godzilla, although I think they should because I wrote books for Julius is in for $20. Yeah, super chats. Some people have way back when GM sent me an LS2, which I probably did, I don't know, 15 or 20 magazine stories with, more than anybody else who's ever been given a motor with, I'm sure. But I have not gotten a 7.3. So Julie says, looking forward to a test on a rear mount. So look at the video that I did on the rear mount. That's up. I have a GT40X 450, 450-08R, an 80 millimeter. Good. Split housing. I'm considering either a single or a twin 2-inch or a single 3-inch running back to the turbo on my 454 Falcon. What is the length, Julius, that you're talking about? So when I ran mine, we ran, actually, I call it 12 feet. It probably was more like 14 feet, actually. And that's way too much. Nobody that I know runs that much distance. What I did was I went out and measured the guys from West Tech have Lisa. Lisa's giving me money. She's taking money and giving me my money. And she's the #1 fan, which is obviously, that's definitely true, because she is like 17 different kinds of awesome. But when I went out and measured, I just went out and measured I think he had a full-size Blazer. So I went out and measured the Blazer and I did like hands. Okay, this is about 6 feet. And this is about, like, I'm 6 feet tall. This is about 6 feet. This is about 6 feet. And 10 feet covered the whole thing. So there's no way it could be more than 10 feet. So I just added stuff onto that to make sure that we had more than enough. And when I'm doing this kind of testing, I like to overshoot it a little bit. And so I know that anything less than that is just going to be better than that. So if we take two extremes, it's really short and really long. Everything else in the middle is going to be kind of between those two things. James Avery, they sell a Godzilla crate motor. They do. That's way out of my price range. As a matter of fact, it probably would be out of my, although now super chat money's coming in. So I'm going to be able to get some guys. So you guys need to be popping up with some super chat money so I can afford that crate motor. Right now, I just like to get to be able to afford. Yeah. $20 coming in. Right now, I just like to be able to get to afford a movie ticket to go see King Kong versus Godzilla. And I don't know how they're going to make Godzilla the bad guy, because Godzilla has always been the good guy. And I'll be disappointed if they try to do that. But I think what's going to happen is I think King Kong and Godzilla are going to team up and beat up like Monster Zero, beat up Giger, which would be awesome. Yes, I'm a Godzilla nerd. Okay, what else we got going on? Did you ever test a T72 turbo? I have. We actually ran a T72 turbo on the sub 2-liter B20 motor that we built to run at Bonneville in the Civic. That's the car that went 227, and it did it with a 72 millimeter from Turbonetics, and it's very fast. And it could easily make more power than we made. We were only running at about 17 pounds, and it had a lot left in it. Ray Jones, hey, we were dropping a Chevette diesel into a 62 Spitfire, and we're looking at putting a 1.8T turbo on it. All of that, see, all of that is good. There's nothing bad that you said there. All that's fantastic. Yes. Oh, yes, Lisa, we know the movies are closed. But I'm waiting for them to open. Open. Hack Job Garage, $20. See, Aaron's in for $1. That's right. Everybody here should be like in for $1, I think. I think that for super chats, if you have a good question and it should be worthwhile to you, that I'll answer it. Even if it's not the right answer, I'll just make something up. At least it'll be clever. We know that. Matt wants to know, what has been your favorite personal race car? Actually, when it comes to race cars, my favorite race car was the 95 Civic Del Sol that I ran. First ran it in Motorola Cup in endurance racing, and then ran it in USTCC, which, by the way, you guys probably don't know, I won the USTCC championship in 2000. And more importantly, met my wife, Lisa, that year, which is also awesome. But yeah, that was my favorite car. I love that car. I love the Del Sol. I like that it was tight and close and all that. I love that it handled well. I love that it did the things that we wanted it to do. It was a good, I built a lot of motors for it. We did a lot of testing with it. We did a lot of stuff, and now it's owned by my buddy John Hansen out in Wendover, Utah. And you guys should recognize the Wendover name because that's where Bonneville is. He's run that car with the K Series and set a land speed record in it. He also owns my 99 Civic SI that we set the land speed record with. That was the world's fastest Honda Civic, and he has run that car and put him and his 2 kids all in the 200-mile-an-hour club because, yes, Killer Bee Racing, Matt, because the Civic is just freaking awesome. Julius, I'll send some pictures of you. I love your input on, oh, see, 6 feet. Yeah, that's like next to nothing. 6 feet of exhaust pipe. He's talking about going from the exhaust basically to the turbo. Andrew wants to know the downside to large heads on a small cam on a 5-liter pushrod motor. I don't think you'll see a big downside if you're running a small cam. Take a look at the video that I have up on where we ran a 175, a 190, 210, and the 225. There might be a little bit of a loss, but not a lot. Especially, hopefully you should be running a turbo. If you're not, you should be. Small tire Mafia, what fuel system you use on the Dyno for the big bang combinations? We have a big Aeromotive brushless pump, which we then put a Kenny Bell boosted pump on if we need it. We run really big injectors, so we don't have to run a bunch of fuel pressure. We normally run a boost reference regulator, and then we run it on race gas and not E85, so the fuel flow need is not quite as much as it would be if we had E85. James wants to know, how do I fit a cargo ship turbo in my Miata? See, James is my kind of guy. There's no such thing as too big a turbo. There's just not enough room. Dylan wants to know if you tested a Speedmaster qualifier intake. Yes, I have. And I think I've run all of their intake manifolds, but you have to be more specific and let me know what engine family that is. If it's a small block Chevy or small block Ford, probably yes, I have. Okay, Corey, which questions have I not answered? Come on. I know you're saying stuff, but bring it to me. I answer all questions. But I will say, Corey, it's not just me, but, you know, Buck from Super Chat might go a long way here. Oh, yeah, NZ50 Turbo is from New Zealand. See, that's my kind of place, too. That's like Australia. Maximum boost for a blow-through 5-liter, 8.5 to 1 compression. Good start. F303 BTM pulling 1 degree per pound of boost. S366 single turbo have hit 16 psi. Well, it depends on what the motor is starting out with. Does the 5-liter have a cam and an intake manifold? Eric's in for $5. Yeah, an F303 with, if you have any kind of decent head on it and any kind of decent intake manifold, you're going to be in the 350 to 375 range. 16 psi. Let's say that doubles the power output because everything's not perfect. So you should be at like 600 or 700 horsepower, I think, with that combination. Eric wants to know, for my LS swap, what is your go-to recommendation for mild cam I can get away with my base tune? See, Eric, almost no matter what cam you put in there other than a stock one, it's going to require a tune, because any kind of cam in an LS is going to change the power output fairly dramatically. LS motors respond very well, even to a small torque cam or even a stage 1 truck cam. It's going to be a big change. It's going to be 30, 40, 50 horsepower. It's going to be a lot. Tyler, that's very funny. What kind of YouTube videos do you watch in your spare time? I think that's cute that you would think that I have spare time. No, but I like all the YouTube guys. I like the Boosted Boys. I like Cletus. I like a lot of stuff. I tend more toward the turbo and supercharged stuff. Dude, Dave stepped up huge. $50. That's like dude, you're gonna go up on the list. I'm gonna make a list. I'm gonna make a list like what is the car show? Why do I not think of that? Probably because of this drink, maybe I'm thinking. You're gonna go up on the list as the high man on the totem pole. Have you been to PRI? Yes, I have. I've been to PRI a couple of times. I've been to SEMA for lots and lots of times. I like PRI a little bit better, Dave, because it's like real performance stuff. Like, I'm not so much into the the neon lights and the spinner rims and all that stuff. Although where the wheels and tires are, that's where all the like model girls are. So we always walk through there, and I always take pictures and stuff. But I like PRI because it has real like hardcore performance stuff, and that's more what I'm interested in. I like the hands-on like stuff. Chevy Love 72. If I run 30 pounds of boost on twin S480s, that's going to be a lot on almost anything with the 85. Do I retard the timing? Okay, wait. What's Lisa talking about here? Top Gear. That's what I'm thinking of. See, Lisa knows. That's what I was trying to think of. Why? How can I forget about Top Gear? It's been so long since I saw a really good episode of Top Gear, though. Do I retard the timing? 0.5 degrees per pound of boost. There are a lot of guys that do it that way. I don't do it that way. 30 pounds of boost on twin S480s. I don't know what motor that is on E85. I've never run 30 pounds on E85. If we go to 30 pounds, because that's a lot of power, we usually run some kind of race gas that has higher octane than the E85. But we will probably be in the like 18 degree range for something like that. It could be even less to be a little bit more conservative. See Lisa Top Gear. She knows me. That's why I'm with her. I know, and I was so surprised. I bet my buddy Jimmy, he told me that that back in the day that Michael Schumacher was the Stig, and I'm like, there's no way. Michael Schumacher is way too big. Yeah, Jeff, it's in for $5. There's no way that Michael Schumacher is going to be the Stig, because he's just too big for something like that. And it turns out that, like many things, like when I told Brian Tooley Racing, you're not going to make over 300 CFM from ported trick flow twisted wedge heads. And I was wrong about that. And I was wrong about Michael Schumacher, which is the most awesome thing in the world back in the day. And he was kind of, awesome. I think he was a like genetic German experiment, and he was so good. And it's hard to tell people really how good he was. There's lots of guys that can go out and drive around the track and go fast. There's no shortage of young kids that are really, really fast. But he understood stuff. Michael Schumacher understood like what the car was doing and why it was doing it. And he could talk to engineers at an engineering level about what needed to be changed to make the car faster, which is very, very rare for like car guys. Jeff wants to know if I can turbo a Tesla. No, but what we can do with a Tesla is we can put a Kenny Bell booster pump on it, which would definitely help. Eric Lane, $2. Yeah, $2 Chuck. E85 versus water meth. No E85 here. I like E85 better. I like stuff that's always there. Like I like intercooling more than I like water meth. I like E85, but lots of guys I know run water meth and they really, really swear by it and use it and it works well. I just, after running the distribution test that I ran when I did the Engine Master stuff, and I actually did a pre-test before that to demonstrate that, but it was concerning to me that it wasn't all getting to the same place at the same time and in the same amounts and stuff. So I was just a little scared of that. Jay Sunday wants to know 2JZ stuff. I have not done 2JZ, and I have not done Barra stuff either, because there's lots of guys out there making 1 million horsepower with those. And I think that those are things that are kind of overdone. Now, that being said, I love the 2JZ. I think that the Supra, I've raced against those in World Challenge, and my poor little Mustang with a 5-liter V8 was no match for a turbo Supra. The guys from Osco, Dennis Ozzie, who is an amazing driver, and his brother Randy built a 2JZ motor that was really it probably made 100 horsepower more than my motor did. So they know how to build power. Dennis knew how to drive. That was an awesome car, and those things are amazing. I mean, they're doing 4-digit stuff without any problem. Thomas wants to know, what do you think of a B20 VTEC with a 38 or 3582R at 14.2 to 1 compression? How did you get that kind of compression on a B20? I mean, that's a really, really high dome piston, which I wouldn't recommend in a Honda, because I've run stuff that's 12.5 to 1 on Hondas, and having a big dome piston is just not a good idea in that combination. I know Matt, everyone wants Lisa to come into the room. I told her that. I told her that everyone likes Lisa way more than they like me, and I'm one of those people. Yeah, Tahoe Jones, $25. See, Tahoe, when you pledge money or do super chat, you have to ask a cool question like, what is the capital of New Jersey, or how high is the Empire State Building, or how high is Mount Everest? Okay, Jason wants to know $5. Jason, best place for a wideband. I've headers going into a single 4-inch. When we run widebands, we run widebands on turbo stuff after the turbo, obviously. You can also run it. It depends on where you want it. Like the ideal situation is to have 802s, one in each one of the cylinders, so we can find out what the distribution is for all the cylinders. That's ideal. If you're going to try to find out a universal thing, put it in the merge somewhere after everything is like mixed up and all together and is even. If you put it right after the merge, you're going to get a reading mostly from one cylinder, 2 cylinders, or 3 cylinders, and not from everything universally. So put it down a little bit, and I think you'll get a better reading. Vulcan wants to know solid rollers versus hydraulic rollers. We've done that test before. The guys and Brule has done that test, because with big block Chevys, he's a really big fan of solid rollers. He does not really like hydraulic rollers because we always have problems with the things wanting to rev and not having enough valve spring pressure. And with solid rollers, you put lots of valve spring in it and it'll rev and the thing will be consistent and stuff. And he just doesn't like hydraulic roller stuff as well as he likes solid roller stuff. The problem I have with solid roller stuff is that it's just not good for like long-term use. I've never seen a solid roller that doesn't wear out rollers or lifters or something. And that's the thing. So you have to balance those two. Shadow Ops, I see you guys. I see you there all the time. You're awesome. Gen 567 big block Chevy, can it hit 1,000 horsepower with a turbo on a stock bottom end? Yes, it can easily. We've already done that a bunch. We did that on the prelim for the Big Bang Gen 6 454, and I think we were near 1,100 horsepower without any problem. Our problem is that we were making too much torque, and so I'm trying to figure out a way to have that not happen so I can run that test and get this thing to rev and make peak power at like 6,500 instead of 5,500. Agil wants to know, are hand-ported 706 heads good for an LQ9? Yes, they are. 706 heads, ported 706 heads work very, very well. In fact, they're probably the first set of ported LS heads that I've ever tested, and they came from Brian Tooley Racing back when he was at Total Engine Airflow, and they work very, very well. When they do them, the guys at Total Engine Airflow do them, they actually put a bigger valve in, they do the chambers, they do the ports, everything works out really well. I like those heads, and I think that they're fantastic. On an LQ9, they would be even better, but if you do them, make sure to unshroud the valves, because that's a big thing on that bigger bore motor. Yeah, CTPR 4. I just put down 1,100 horsepower with a 2-inch crossover on a single turbo with an automatic. See, it's not the 2-inch crossover is not going to limit power, at least not in that range. Tahoe Jones, see what's $25 if it helps a friend. I like Tahoe Jones. What's up? Tahoe in the house. Normal guy wants to know the max horsepower limit for an L33. I don't think anybody's ever found it. I mean, if you look at the guys that are out there drag racing, I can never remember his name, and I love the stuff that he does because he goes out and runs. I mean, these are 40 pounds of boost stuff. But yeah, you can make 15, 16, 17, I don't know, 1,800. I don't know what the limit is on the motor. But stock bottom end stuff has gone easily 1,500 horsepower with that stuff. Matt's in for $10. See, Matt, and see, this is the kind of thing. I'd much rather have this than the $10. Richard and Lisa, can you please visit us in Australia? See, now that's the way that you invite somebody. When the world opens up, you can visit our junkyards too. I would love to go to Australia. I'd love to see Holdens. I would love to see all of that crazy stuff. I'd like to go anywhere, whether it's in the outback, whether it's Sydney, whether it's sharks, whether it's snakes, whether it's gators or crocs, whatever. All of that for Australia, I'm all in. I just want somebody to talk to me in an Australian accent. See, Lisa's ready to go. Sign me up. Cheers, everybody. Let's see. Send for racing, blow through carb, or fuel injected for a single turbo LS. Actually, the thing is, a lot of guys want to argue about which one works better. You shouldn't do that. It's like arguing blue state or red state or whatever. They both work. You can, Jeff, $5. A blow through carb, we've made lots and lots of power. Lots of guys out drag racing, blow through carburetors. They work fine as long as you tune them right. That's the thing. Same thing with fuel injection. Fuel injection for me, I like tuning individual cylinders as long as we can read individual cylinders and do the things that we need to do. Both of them work. Both of them make lots of power. Both of them offer charge cooling. So let's see what Jeff has to say. I built a 347 with Brian Tooley, Twisted Wedge heads in the mid-90s. OG Brian Tooley, I like that. And I had a speed brain. I don't know what a speed brain is. You remember the speed brain around low 11s and a coupe with a C4. I don't know what the speed brain is. I do know, I hope that I still have it. I haven't seen it for a long time. I had a Crane Interceptor, and we used that out at the Silver State where I ran wide open throttle for like 35 minutes. I don't know what a speed brain is. I have to take a look. You gotta have to show me. I obviously don't know everything. I thought that I knew everything about 5-liter Mustangs, but obviously that's not the case. Jason wants to know if that's water you're drinking. Sure, it's proper hydration. It's a little muddy water though. Matt says you have the best beaches in the world. You do. They're just big great white sharks there, but we have that too in California. We have what's called the Red Triangle. It's the Galapagos Islands in that area. So there's lots of really big great whites here and lots of juvenile great whites off the coast of California because this is where the small ones will grow up out here in California. How much of is it a pain to stick a turbo on a stock TBI 5th gen 454 on a Gen 5 454 with a throttle body injection? It will be a pain, mostly because you can't get enough fuel to it. There just isn't big enough injectors for a TBI unless you do like additional injector controls and that kind of stuff. But it becomes kind of problematic. It'd be much better for you just to put a Gen 6 motor in there or do a blow-through carbureted kind. Darren wants to know, hey, Rich, I got a stock LS1 and I'm rebuilding it in a 1980 Land Cruiser. Stroke the LS1 if I'm going to a turbo. You'll be able to make way more power than you can ever use with the turbo without stroking it. You can get away with the stock stuff. The green screen, $5. I like it. You'll be able to make way more power than you need with the turbo. The turbo can do everything that you need. Don't spend the money on stroking it. Team Shinoda says the best 5-liter EFI intake is the Rouse Stage 3. I'm not familiar with I've tested, I think, every 5-liter intake manifold, and I'm not familiar with that one. So if it's something new, I obviously would like to take a look at it. Hill Customs, California water is dark, cold, and dirty. I would have to agree with that. That's why I love going to the Bahamas or Grand Cayman or even down in Mexico when we go down there. I love it down there. We like going to Hawaii. Australia obviously would be awesome. If I want to go somewhere, I want it to be tropical. I want it to be warm. I want Lisa in a bathing suit. And I want to see lots and lots of fish and all kinds of stuff. So let's see what the green screen has to say. Buddy gave me a BTR Stage 3 NA cam. What spring should I use? And should I expect over my SS2 cam, Pack 1218s, 408 stroker, 86 millimeter turbo? I think ultimately that turbo is probably going to determine how much power you can make on your 408. You probably could do it with either one of the cams. So you probably make a little more power NA with that camshaft than you would on a sloppy Stage 2. But ultimately, like I said, the 86 millimeter turbo probably would limit what the ultimate power is, and you could get there with either one of those cams. Russell's in for $5. I like that. I'll drink to that. Let's see, what do we got going on? Will you ever do a 534860 truck dyno testing? We got to see wheel numbers too. I've run lots of stuff on the chassis dyno. We know what it does. All the numbers are just obviously lower than they are in the engine dyno. The thing that I like about the engine dyno as opposed to the chassis dyno is if we're going to do a change, like if we're going to do a camshaft or cylinder heads or whatever, doing it on the chassis dyno is a real pain in the ass. It takes 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 times as long to do it on the chassis dyno as it does on the engine dyno. And it's going to give us the same relative number. Some guys like the chassis dyno number because that's all they ever see. Some guys like the engine dyno number like me. I just like it because it's easier, more convenient. I can get more testing done and give you more information. See, Matt saying, if I want warm, it's 40 degrees Celsius here. The problem is that I'm in the United States and we don't know what 40 degrees Celsius is. Where we live right now, it's about 40 degrees Fahrenheit. It's cold here tonight. But during the summer, it gets to be, 100 or 105. So we're used to that. So hot weather, I got no problem with. Darren says, Richard, thanks and good day from Toowoomba. Dude, Australia. I love the guys in Australia, man. If you ever need a room, see, I'm there. As long as you have brown snakes or king browns or something, then I want to come down and catch one. Tahoe Jones, it's snowing here. I guess you win. If this is California, it doesn't really get that cold. Well, we have had snow here in Vacaville, which is where I live, but it doesn't get that cold. It will snow here once every 10 years or whatever. Sometimes, we have to drive up to Tahoe or whatever to get more snow. And I've lived up there for a while too. But even that's not terribly cold. Lisa is lucky. She's the luckiest girl in the world. James wants to know, do you do any engine stuff for Jay Leno? Actually, Jay's run a few things at West Tech, which are cool things. Like he ran a little Lotus motor there and stuff. And he's like a real car guy, which is awesome. I like Jay. I think he's a funny guy. I love him on Last Man Standing. We still have all of the episodes of Last Man Standing, and he's on there. And he's like a real car guy. So he knows cars and he knows stuff, and he has lots of really, really cool stuff. And he has run a few motors there, and the guy that does all the stuff for him is awesome. Robert's Enterprise. I got a 94 Chevy Silverado 350 small block. Can I get 1,000 horsepower on boost and E85? Yes, you'd be best making a little bit more power out of the 350 NA before you try to add that much boost to get to 1,000 horsepower. But you certainly can get there. Kurt Nickel, thank you, $20. See, all of this Super Chat stuff is all working out. So if you guys haven't jumped in on Super Chat, make sure you jump in. Come on, these answers just don't pay for themselves. Oh, that's all nonsense. Best way to control boost with an integral wastegate. We've done tests with external wastegates and internal wastegates. And usually the problem with internal wastegates is the flow orifice. Actually, for the internal wastegate, you get to a limit where it cannot basically bypass enough flow on the internal wastegate because the hole that's in it and the little valve that covers it is just simply not big enough. That's why guys go to a bigger wastegate. And that's usually the problem with internal wastegates. You can put a bleed valve on them and control it that way, like we did that with the SVO Mustang stuff. How do I get some performance parts here in California? That's a sketchy subject, though. The California guys do not want you modifying your car or buying any performance parts. Do I mean that Jay Leno doesn't do his own work? I'm sure that he does. He actually knows how to work on cars. But when you have 50 or 100 or 1,000, I don't know how many cars you get, he has people that take care of that stuff for him, so I'm sure. Kim, have you ever done a twin turbo on a cast iron 350? We did one on the junkyard motor, but I think it had aluminum heads and stuff on it. I haven't done anything on a Vortec headed one. It'll just make less power NA than it would. Australia here, Russell. Have a 6-liter with a standard converter, 6-speed. What do you recommend for the best cam without having to change the converter? Then do something small. Do like a stage 1 or stage 2 truck cam for that if you don't want to change the converter. Randy's Fox Body, look for a good cam for a 410. Victor Jr. heads 12.5 to 1. Don't want to go over 7,000 RPM. I don't know what intake you have on there, but something like a stage 3, probably. I don't know if it's a 410 LS, then something like a stage 3 or stage 4 NA cam, or something like a 248, 254. That might be a little bit big. So let's say a 236, 248 kind of duration for a 410. I think the 248, 254 probably would work on a 410 also. Bob Moore, 496, twin 80 millimeter T6 hot sides. How to size the wastegates? I would put at least, like, we run 245s on it on the big block stuff. You could go to 50s or 60s, and those you can't over wastegate it, so that won't be a problem. So stick with something that usually a lot of times guys choose their wastegates based on fitment. So if it will only fit a small wastegate, and that's the thing I like about the guys from TurboSmart is they have wastegates that are like the heads of them are physically small, but the valves are really big. So you can get away with a lot of stuff. Oh, see, Robert says 40 degrees Celsius is 104 to 105. See, that's my kind of warm. I like that. As long as I can go in the water, I'm good. The lobby, what is back pressure safe limit and indicates me this to stop rising boost? There's not a boost pressure to back pressure absolute limit. 1-to-1, like less than 1-to-1 is great. That's what we had on our Bonneville car. 1-to-1 is good. 1.5-to-1 is good. 2-to-1, start getting up there. If it's 3-to-1, you should be looking at a bigger turbo. Brian, I agree. We should do a direct port water meth test. I agree. That's what we wanted to do. And if we wanted to do that, since I did that test with Engine Master. Plum Piper, can you install a wastegate opening and a header runner? Space limits me to go to integral wastegates. If you're going to put a wastegate on, don't put it in one pipe. Put it in the merge collector. You want it to open more than that. This is a problem that we had way back when on the B series stuff. Anybody that's done Honda stuff knows the drag manifold that the cast iron drag manifold that they use. They put the wastegate basically on one runner. Unfortunately, it didn't control boost very well because it was only evacuating the exhaust from basically one runner. It wasn't evacuating everything. So you had basically a rising boost curve, which is not a good idea. So make sure that it's central, so it's evacuating the exhaust from all 4 of the cylinders or all 8 of the cylinders, whatever your combination is. The green screen, 1,500 to 2,000 horsepower turbo LSX. That's maybe a little bit out of my range. When should I worry about wall thickness? I don't think you need to worry about making the motor big. The turbos can take care of whatever boost you need and whatever power you need. So I would rather have lots of wall thickness, because what's going to happen is I'm not worried about the wall itself being damaged. What I'm worrying about is head gasket sealing. So try to have as much head gasket sealing. Like if you make a 427, you can easily make a 2,000 horsepower 427. It doesn't have to be a 440 or a 468, or forget about the NA stuff. The turbos will do everything that you need to do. If you make a 600 or 700 or 800 horsepower 427 and you add boost to it, good things are obviously going to happen. Lisa, you have apps and drinks? Yeah, $20. Do I know anything about the Holley Terminator wiring harness? Unfortunately, you're probably going to want your money back. I've never run a Terminator. We've only run HP and Dominator. I would imagine that it's similar, but I've never run like a Terminator X. We just haven't run that on the dyno. I want to change my LS Gen 3 main harness to a Gen 4 and not sure if the computer would allow that. I don't know. Do they have a Terminator that plugs right into the factory harness? I'm not even aware of that because I never run factory ECUs. We don't run the Terminator. We run a Holley HP or a Dominator, which runs the same main harness. And the only thing we change out is if it's like an LS3, we run that harness. If it's an LS1, we run that harness. Then we change the injector harness based on injectors, whether it's an old style or a new style injector. We change the injector harness, and then we plug it into the various places. I wish that I could be more help, but like I said, I don't do any tuning on factory harnesses or computers. Lisa, what are you doing? Why are you talking to Tahoe? What's up, yo? Jeff White's in for $5. And to answer your question, yes, I did work with Campy at Muscle Mustangs and Fast Forwards way back in the day. And then I worked with Evan after he took the reins. Both of those guys, like totally awesome. I remember getting lots of calls from Campusano saying, hey, look, the book has grown. They've added pages. I need more tech stuff, which is exactly what I wanted to hear as a technical editor, because I got paid for doing stories. So I gave them more and more stories. And that was kind of during the heyday of Muscle Mustangs and Fast Fords, when it was growing beyond belief and everybody wanted to modify their 5-liter Mustang. And so that was an awesome time. And I love Campusano and I love Evan. Both of those guys do great stuff. Now Lisa's loving everybody. She loves Tahoe Joe. She loves Campusano. Although I have to say, Campusano did get mad at me when I wrote an unkind piece about Paris Hilton. I think I referenced in one of my stories, and he's like, why are you going after Paris Hilton? But, she was popular. That's why I went after her. Yes, Matt at Sloppy Mechanics knows way more about Terminator X than I do. He does a lot of that stuff. And he's actually really good with wiring and running the factory harness and stuff. Danny is a VSR 7665. Is this going to spool quick? Yes, that should work fairly well. Rob Vander Veen, if you get a chance to do some Mercedes big bang motors. I actually do want to do a Mercedes motor. I would love to do that. And I also want to do a Nissan 5.6 liter. And everybody wants me to do the 1UZ or 2UZ or 3UZ, whatever they are, the Toyota V8s as well. And I think I would really like to do one of those. Team Shinoda wants to know, are you still doing magazine articles? I am not. I actually don't write anymore. Yeah, Pat Landmore's in for $10. Team Shinoda, I don't. And you should contact me. If I don't know what Team Shinoda is, but I love all the stuff that Larry Shinoda did. So if you guys are in any way associated with those guys, he was like, awesome. But I haven't done any magazine articles for quite a while now. I like YouTube a lot better. I like talking to people. I like videos. I like that a lot better. Project Iron Ore is in for $4.99. Like, you couldn't go $5, really? That's what you're all about? Is a 600 horsepower turbo too small for a 5.3? No, it's not. Actually, the GT45, which is what I would suggest, for two reasons. One, it could make more than 600. It can make 800 if you do everything right. But it can certainly make 700 or 750. And it should be fairly responsive on a 5.3, especially a cam 5.3. And the real reason that you want it is because it's dirt cheap. We bought ours for $163. Frankie Thomas, twin VSR 7875s. That's a lot of turbo. That's like 2,000 horsepower with a turbo on an LQ4. Is it going to spool at all? Take a look, Frankie. Take a look at the video that I have up on the two Gen 4, the Gen 3 and the Gen 4 6-liter motors. We ran two S475s on them. They're T475s, which is probably what those 7875s are. They're going to be comparable in terms of spool rate. They made a bajillion horsepower. So I don't think if you want, that's 2,000 horsepower with a turbo. If you don't want to make that much, you don't need those turbos. You can do something else that will spool better. If you only want 1,500, then I would put 1,500 horsepower turbos on them. If you want room to grow and you want to make that kind of power, then use those. And if you're trying to do that, then you're trying to make really big power. You're going to have to do stuff to make those things spool up. Matt wants to know, are cheap eBay turbos really worth it? We've had nothing but good luck on all of our eBay turbos, and so I would say definitely yes. We've used the and back in 2010 when I first ran those T76s from CX Racing, they're still alive. They still work, and that GT45 has lasted and lasted and lasted. We've run lots of stuff with it. Old, fat, and slow. That's awesome. I had a direct port water meth on a PT Cruiser. See, cool. It was a stock turbo deal with a direct port fogger too, dude. You had that thing all plumbed up, man. Tyler wants to do pre-wagers on what the L67 will make. That's the 3800 Series 2 V6. And now I kick myself because when I was, I don't know if you guys noticed, if you take a look at the video where I did the walk around in the dyno or in the wrecking yard, there was actually a Series 3 motor there, I guess, that I should have picked up because it had the good blower. But luckily for me, I already have one of those. Somebody sent me one of those that I can test, which we will run. I'm going to run that blower, but it would have been cool to have that other motor too. Tahoe Jones, it's funny. This guy knows this stuff, and I'll say stuff because that's not exactly what he said, but that's why his thing is being hidden right now. I have done lots and lots of testing, Tahoe Joe. I've done since I wrote my first story back in 1989. So if nothing else, I hope I've learned something over that period of time. And I've gone out of the way to do lots and lots of testing and learn lots and lots of stuff as much as I could from really, really smart guys, like hanging out with John Lingenfelter and Corky Bell and John Causey and guys that are a lot smarter than me. And I just sit there and listen. I don't tell them how much I know. Because, as a matter of fact, when John Lingenfelter walked up to me when I went out to the Road and Track Top Speed shootout with my Mustang, I had a Vortex supercharger on it. And I was there. I was the only guy that drove my car out. Everybody else brought their cars on trailers. I didn't know any better. That's all I had. I put my tires in the back and because they gave me free tires, which is the only reason that I went, which I thought was awesome. But I drove out. Oh, almost spilled my drink. I drove out to the track and I was sitting there working on my car. And John Lingenfelter walked up to me. He goes, "Hey, dude, tell me about the supercharger." I'm like, "Dude, you're John Lingenfelter. What am I going to tell you about superchargers?" And he said, "No, we've never run any of these. You've run lots of these because I've seen the stuff that you've been doing," which I thought was awesome that he would even know who I was and knew that I did lots of this stuff. But he said, "Tell me about this because we've never run these and we want to." So we started asking me questions. And I thought, you know what? That's the most awesome thing in the world. And he really was. He was the most awesome guy that I met. And to get to sit there and listen to hear the stories that John Lingenfelter told and that Corky Bell told and Norwood and all of these guys told about stuff that they've done, it was just an awesome, it just gives me goosebumps every time I think about it. I agree with you, Racer D. These guys are talking about 1,000 horsepower engines. Have they ever driven a car that has 1,000 horsepower? I've been in a car that has 1,000 horsepower, and it's just ridiculous. T. Larson wants to know if there are any Coyotes. I have Coyote videos up, and I love the Coyote. It works really well. I did a lot of Gen 1 stuff, and I want to do a big bang on the Coyote because I think if anything can dethrone the LS from the 1,500 horsepower and 43 horsepower, big block Chevy or possibly Coyote. Danny wants to know, is 700 horsepower too much to ask out of a billet 7665.96 on a 5.3? It depends on which 76 you're talking about. I did a video and I did a magazine story way back in the day where I compared two 76 millimeter turbos. I had two of them. I had the T76 from CX Racing and I had the 7675 from Precision Turbo. Well, those two turbos make 500 horsepower difference in power, even though they're both technically rated as 76 millimeter turbos. So be careful what you're talking about when you're talking about 76 millimeters because they're not all equal. They're not all the same. One of them was a 700 horsepower turbo and the other one was a 1,200 horsepower turbo. So there's a difference. Somebody had a question about Bob Norwood, which I thought was interesting. Bob Norwood was just nuts. He was the guy that brought a Ferrari GTO bodied car with a twin turbo big block out there. And he had a few problems with it, as you might imagine. He had an air shifter and all kinds of stuff. Lingenfelter's car, he had a naturally aspirated C4 Corvette that he said would go 202 and it went 202 because he knows what he's talking about. He said, yeah, if I could have changed the alignment a little bit, it would have got another mile an hour or whatever. And I believe him because he's John Lingenfelter and he knows what the hell he's talking about. Bob Norwood said the car was going to go 250 and it never went anything like that, although it did have the power to do that. CarTech, Corky Bell, brought a Turbo RX-7 out and it blew up several times, which is not surprising. But it was like I said, it was the most awesome thing for me. This was very early on in my career. I had a Vortec on there. We had just run the Mustang. I drove it out there. We drove it back. It was the only car to do that. The only other car that did that was a brand new Acura NSX. And it didn't go nearly as fast as my Mustang did. But I did end up buying an NSX later on. So I do love that car. And ask Lisa, she got to drive it. She loved it. Okay, Tom, that's an interesting statement. Why anyone would buy a factory car and call it a race car and not even buy a sports car is a wannabe built, not bought. Okay, so Tom, here's an interesting thing. I had my Mustang, supercharged Mustang. I was at the Virginia City Hill Climb. There was a guy there that had a Ferrari F40. I built my car and it was very fast. It wasn't as fast as that F40 was. And of those two, let me know which one of those cars that you would pick. It's not even close. If I had the money, I would have a Ferrari F40. Yes, Ryan, I agree. The NSX is a great car. One of my favorite cars. Lisa drove it. She loved it because it was basically a Civic with a really sexy. But I used to call it the the Italian Ferrari because it was what if Honda made a Ferrari, this is what it would be. It was a Japanese Ferrari. And basically it was a Honda Civic, but it had a really sexy body and a much bigger motor. And it was really, really cool. Although after we turbocharged it, and thanks Jimmy from HP Performance, after they turbocharged it, it made as much as 525 at the tire, which is really good. We ran it around at about 420 at the tire. And after the turbo, it was like an awesome, awesome car. And I wish I still had it because if you look at the price of NSXs now, it's just freaking ridiculous. Robert Smith, I have a 331 stroker and I'm trying to get 650 to 700 wheel. What would be the right turbo to get the setup? That GT35 is a really good one for that kind of power range. Or a GT45, I should say. Lisa, why are you talking about ripping off the front bumper? Graham H, what size turbo would you recommend for an NA 480 horsepower to the crank, 5.3 liter? What you recommend for a decent response, but around 700 horsepower on a rear mount turbo setup? 700 horsepower is still in the range of that GT45. That would still work good. If you want more than that, then you need to go up. The Garrett 366 or an S4, something in the S400 range, an S475 or something, maybe even a little smaller than that. Yes, Matt, Amir and his F48 or his F40. He was nuts. But that's awesome though. That's cool that he brought his F40 out to Bonneville and stuff. That's just like super cool. The guy that brought it out to the Virginia City Hill Climb was a different thing. Although he used to bring, I remember he brought his Testarossa. It's the guy that owns Spectre, and he brought his Testarossa up to the Virginia City Hill Climb. And I was talking to him, and he was like totally cool guy. He was awesome. I had my Mustang there, and he had a Testarossa, and then like the year after that, he had a 512, and it had he said it had over 100,000 miles on it. He said he drove it every day, which nobody did with Ferraris. He said that's the problem is these guys don't drive these things. He said these motors are actually built like tanks. These things are awesome. You just need to drive them all the time. All these guys don't drive their cars, and that's the problem. And he drove his all the time, which I thought was fantastic. I know. Thank goodness I forgot. I know. I remember the bumper on the NSX, but you know what? You're way too pretty. I would always forgive you. Steven Smith, I'm building a 13.5 to 1 6-liter LS. How can I keep my compression and run 13 pounds of boost? That's an awful lot. You need lots of octane to do that. So why is my thing still freaking out? Come on. I need to get a new camera. I need a camera that stays in focus. James wants to know the benefits of ceramic ball bearing turbos. Maybe there's some reduction in friction there. I've not done a test, but I'd like to see a test on response rate. I honestly don't think that there's going to be a lot. I don't think that that's what determines response rate. Once you get oil into a conventional bearing, I don't think you'll see a lot of difference. A hot mess, good handle. I like that. What would you recommend for a twin setup on an LS4 where underhood space is extremely limited? Well, you're limited into what you can put in there. I'm going to go, just trying to get my thing to focus. Whatever you can fit, two GT3582s or something even smaller, and that depends on your power level. You have to fit what you can fit, and that's the problem with space constraints, is that they just don't always work. I have about 2 more minutes, and then I'm going to get going. Corey trying to set me up and to go against Gail Banks. Of a pair of Garrett T3, T4 hybrids, Gail Banks says they're a waste of time. It depends on what power level you're wanting. We've run lots of hybrid turbos on Honda stuff, and they work fantastic. And I like Gail Banks. I've read all this stuff and love to do more stuff with them. But Gail Banks doesn't go out to wrecking yards and stuff. So, you have to take that for what it's worth. Chris wants to know if I've tested any compressed natural gas. I have not. And I've not done any propane stuff. I'd like to, because I think it would be cool. Come on. Why does my camera freak out? If anybody knows, I need a technical guy. Let's see. AREX, TFS 225, milled to 58cc. I would like to build a 5357 with a blower. Are these heads too high of a compression? No, they're not. They'll work just fine. A turbo 2.3 shootout, old versus new. That would be interesting. The older motor, the original SVO and the T-Bird and all that stuff, that's not really a great motor. It's a 2-valve motor. It doesn't make a ton of power. The heads don't flow very well. You have to get a lot of work done on those to make them work really well. Any sort of modern 4-valve motor is way better. It's just so awesome the camera can't focus. Yes, for you. I want the camera just to stay at the same focal length. I don't know why that this one adjusts so much. Come on, stupid camera. I'll poke you in the eye. Grant wants to know how much good do long tube headers versus cast manifolds make on turbo applications. I don't know. I haven't run that test the way that I want to. I would like to do that remote test with long tube headers and find out if it actually does something. I haven't a hot mess. I haven't been on much lately. Well, then you need to get on the program here and show up more often. You also need to get on the super chat and kick up a buck or something. He wants to know what happens with the 3800 Series 2 and if we're going to do a compound on it. And yes, we are. That's one of the first things I'm going to do is we're going to run the blower. We're going to run, as soon as we get it running, we're going to run different pulley levels and yada, 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 and then put a turbo on it, because there's no motor that I've ever seen that wants a turbo more than a 3800 Series 2. The exhaust is already literally set up for a turbo. You need a Nova update. I need to fix my freaking camera. Maybe turn the autofocus off. See, that's why I come to you guys, because you guys probably have all of this information. I need to find out where that is. The green screen, you want the SS2 versus the World turbo version. I want that too. Although the thing that the reason that I haven't done it is I'm disenchanted about that test, because I know that when I do this and I change 12 cams or whatever, that they're all going to make the same power. And it's going to really piss me off when I do all that testing and nothing's going to come of it. Matt Anton, if that's directed at me, didn't you race a Focus as well? No, I had a Focus and I wrote a book on Focus performance, but I never actually raced one. Although Lisa, who's awesome, did drive the Focus at Bonneville as fast as that Focus would go out on the salt when we were driving back to the return road. I need to finish this drink. Actually, this drink is technically 2 drinks, so I'm extra hydrated. If only my camera would focus. Tony wants to know what a good compression ratio is for a turbo build. Well, Tony, if you had done Super Chat and put in 99 cents, we'd be able to answer that question. But since you didn't and you're trying to freeload here like everybody else, we can't answer that. So nobody here is going to help you. Actually, it doesn't matter. Any sort of compression will work, whatever the factory compression is. If you're higher than that, it's fine. If you're lower than that, it's fine. It all depends on what octane you have. So whatever octane you have, lots of guys run really high compression because they want to make lots of power in race applications, but they usually have really high octane to deal with. They also have intercoolers. They have M1 or E85. If you have lower compression, you can get away with more stuff. If you're trying to do it on pump gas, I would recommend lower compression. Tim Webb wants to know how much timing and boost for a 351 on 93. It depends on how much boost you have and how much timing you have. Those things are inversely proportional. The more boost you have, the less timing you have. Yeah, Aaron's in for $5. See, I can guilt people into like, and see my focus came back. All I had to do is jump up and down. Racer D, what do you know about running the 130-mile-an-hour club at Bonneville? Actually, what you should do if you want to go to Bonneville, go there during the not during Speed Week and not during World Finals. There's a race that's in between those two. That's the race that you want to go to because those guys are much more. They're much nicer about tech and all that stuff, and you can go out and actually run street cars up to I think about 150 miles an hour. And so it's really, really cool. So if you want to get a Bonneville experience, go out with those guys and it's awesome. You get the Bonneville experience. You don't have to wait in line for hours and hours like you do at Speed Week because there's 500 or more people out there. And the same thing for World Finals usually is not that long. But the problem with World Finals is that you end up like it usually gets rained out because it's in October and you start getting weather. It rains out there. It gets water because that's a dry lake. Well, it's not dry the whole time. It's only dry when we run there. Like during most of the time, it's just a lake. Tony's in $4.99. I wonder what makes them $4.99 instead of $5. It's that extra penny. That's just like, okay, that's too much. There's a limit. $4.99. I can do that. $5? No, I'm not having it. Tony, you need to ask a question when you sign up, which is awesome. Thank you very much. When you sign up, have a question because then I don't pay attention to anybody else. I'm only talking to the people who are doing super chat and super stickies or stickers or whatever they are. I'm new to all of this. Yes, Lisa has been. I want to make sure Lisa's very hydrated. It's very important. Hydration is very important in our family. Wendell wants to know what is the expected horsepower on a 500 horsepower NA 6-liter adding twin GT35 T4 68 ARs. GT35s are about 500 to 600 horsepower turbos. If you have two of them, you can do twice that much. If you're starting with 500 horsepower, you're just going to get there at a fairly low boost level. So you're going to be in the 1,000 to 1,100 horsepower range if you turn them all the way up. A 0.6 AR is going to be kind of on the tight side for a 6-liter, but you should be able to get close to that. I know the super chat forces you to do $5.99 or $4.99. Ryan Johnson, $10. See, Ryan knows how to step all the way up. Maybe towards a new camera, or at least one, or at least maybe for me to get instruction on how to stop this thing from autofocusing. And John's in for $5. Awesome. You guys are awesome. See, Dale. See, I like Dale. Dale Thomas. I'm hydrated as heck right now. And I use the word heck. It's not actually heck. It's actually something else. But cheers to you, Dale. Okay, last question. Me large brain. See, he has a large brain. Mine, small brain. What's the maximum horsepower I can run on a low buck turbo setup on a Gen 3 5.3 with stock pistons and rods? Okay, brain. This is you and I talk right now. Forget about everybody else. What I want you to do is go on to the channel. Look up the Big Bang 4.8. Look up the Big Bang 5.3. Look up the Big Bang 6.0. All three of the first Big Bang motors were all Gen 3 motors. We made 1,482 horsepower with a 6-liter. We made 1,200 with a 4.8 and 1,300 with the 5.3. So you can make a lot of power with a stock bottom end, put ring gap in it, even on a Gen 3 motor. I'd recommend the Gen 4 stuff, but even on a Gen 3, you can make more power than most people realize. John Ludlam, $5. Awesome. T. Larson, $10. Yes. Keep going. More Coyote content. I do. I so want to do a Big Bang Coyote motor. I think that would be awesome. Okay, John, last question. Then I have to go see Lisa, make sure she's hydrated. Will Twin 76 work for my 545 big block Ford? Yes. 2 S475s, which is basically a 76 millimeter. It's a 75 millimeter technically, but don't tell John because he probably doesn't know. On your big block Ford will make 2,000 horsepower. If you want more than that, you can go up to an S480. If you want less than that, well, then we'll say bad things about you, obviously, because you shouldn't want less than that, especially on a 545-inch big block Ford. You should want at least 2,000 horsepower. But they will work well. That's a big motor. They'll respond well. You'll make lots of power. We ran those on our big block 454, which is 100 cubic inches less. We ran them on a 6-liter LS, which they work fine on. All that's good. Those turbos work well. I have to get going. I have to finish my hydration. I have to go see Lisa. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks everybody for the super chat thing. I was really interested in seeing whether or not it even worked. I don't know if I pushed the right buttons. This is all new to me. I'm going to be doing obviously lots of live stream stuff. So if you guys want to help, that's fantastic. If you have questions, I love talking to everybody. I've got more tests coming up. We're going to do the response rate test of the different Y pipes. I'm probably even going to build them, which I think is a little suspect. The guys from JFab, Jason, my buddy, built the other Y pipe that we use all the time, and he does a good job. He's a much better welder than I am. But I think that I can get this stuff done. I can do it the way that I want it done, so I can adapt it and not have to change the length very much. We can do the divided Y pipe versus the single one. Lots of cool stuff and more. We're answering more questions for you guys. Thanks for tuning in.